President George Kuchek has asked the committee to, the pickleball club to respond to. So mainly, we're not going through the same presentation we went through last time, but if you have questions for Ken or concerns, we'll go through and have those presented. And Carl's here too, so if he has any elaboration on any of these issues. Bob, you had something? Oh, and please give me your name.
I'm Bob with the Properties Committee, and I have no questions. I do have a comment before we do a vote. You want me to go ahead and do that?
Yeah,
comment?
go ahead and do
okay,
that.
well, this is roughly what I have. I think as this proposal has come up, I think that it has brought up something which the Properties Committee has to look at, and that is the overall picture. And the overall picture is that we're running out of land to develop. We're running out of places to put people when they're requesting more property space. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at Kuntz. Kuntz is probably the largest piece of property that we have that we could actually develop into something else. Do we let the first club that comes to us use it, or do we go to all the clubs that may want to have more space, make a proposal, or do we let the rec center go and do a multi-use thing that everyone can use? So that's the first questions. The next questions is that are we going to continue to expand into parking lots? And if we do expand into parking lots and the facility that we've expanded into has a major event, what is going to be the traffic as far as on the side streets and in the community? The next question is, are we going to develop on every square inch of vacant land that we have in Sun City West? And the next thing is allocation. Who's going to get this? We are running out of space, and we have to have some sort of plan. So virtually the only answer to this is that we have a long-range master plan that needs to be done so that we can figure out as to what we're going to do. You have a comment, George?
Mr. Hartley, did you realize at our last governing board meeting we instituted a master plan committee?
Yes, I am, and that's why so roughly what I would like to do is that I would like to make a recommendation that at this time that the pickleball proposal be delayed to a later time, and that the master plan committee comes up with proposals on the use of facilities and properties.
Well, Bob, that's up to your committee. I can only say that when it comes to a master plan, okay, there are going to be multiple architects, multiple uses, and multiple people that are going to be looking at, first we have to find out what we have here, as far as what we have as far as facilities that are used, overused, or underused, okay? And then you have to match that up with the needs of what clubs have. We may just have, as an example, the ice skating club may need a bigger rink, okay? Is that what is in the best interest of the owner members of the association? That is what that's going to be. And that's going to be, they're supposed to report to us back in May. At the end
Okay,
of May.
and so what I'm saying at this time is that till that report comes out, I would like to have some sort of information before we get there and make a decision on.
Bob, that's up to your committee. I'm just telling you that there are two different issues here. Okay, and the issue is that what your committee does is what your committee does. Your recommendation to the governing board is taken under considerable weight. We look at the committees as what the voice and the heartbeat of the community are. And if they recommend to us, we look at it and look at it as recommendation. And if they recommend it for us not to go forward, we also take that under consideration, because all these projects go through at least 3 committees. Each one has a separate function and going on from there. And obviously properties, what you have said is absolutely imperative, is that we do not have room for everything and anything. And our ice skating rink, which is not our first priority here, is all over the place. That's what this committee is going to be looking at and giving us information for. I wish I could say I have all the information today, but it was just formed last week, and they're putting their people together on it. It's going to comprise of people from the community, a couple of staff people, and they're going to be looking at not only who has what space, the numbers of what space, and all that goes into it. That's what it's going to be. I hope that will not sway, but put it under that it's not just willy-nilly going forward on this.
Yeah,
We want to make sure that as the governing board represents the association, we are making the best possible choices for the association.
Okay, so then what I'd like to do is I'd like the Properties Committee to make a recommendation to the board that the proposal from the Pickleball Club be postponed until we have a master plan that we can get there and take a look at the use of properties and availability of properties. I would like that for a recommendation from the Properties Committee to the
Are you
board.
making that as a motion?
I'd like to make that as a motion, yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Will you
All right.
repeat
Barb's
the exact motion?
What's that?
Please
needs the
repeat the
exact
exact.
motion.
I'd like to make a motion that, in other words, the proposal that the Pickleball Committee has given us, that it be delayed till a later time until we have more information on the master plan, on the use of facilities and properties, till we could make an accurate decision.
So pickleball recommendation be delayed until?
Until a further time, because at this time, we have to wait till we get the master plan. And I don't want to give a timeline, because I want to wait till we get the master plan as to the use of our properties and availability of space. And I think as we're limiting space, so I guess we should go with proposal first.
Okay, you're rambling a little bit, so
Okay,
I'm gonna,
so-
I'm gonna tell you what I have for your motion. I wrote down, pickleball recommendations be delayed until further time, comma, when the master plan has been delivered.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct.
That's what I understand from what you're saying?
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right, and we have a second. We have a second from Barb Sloan,
Okay.
and now we can open it up to discussion. Does anybody have any other comments or questions? Ken?
Yes, if I'm allowed to participate in the discussion. The point that Bob has brought up basically comes to whether this expansion project is a need or a want. You must realize that this planning for this expansion has been going on for over 3.5 years. Originally, it came out of a specific recommendation from Sun City West Space Utilization Committee that worked for over a year in analyzing all of the space needs, the utilization, what space was working, what space wasn't working, and the needs of the future for the community. And their recommendation as part of the master plan presentation on December 20th, 2018 to the governing board was the expansion of pickleball at Palm Ridge and/or Kuntz with an addition of 16 to 18 courts. So the process that you're referring to has already been worked through that process. We are just now at the end of the stage of that same process, working towards approvals for dollars to make those recommendations a potential reality. The information that that Space Utilization Committee analyzed in depth during the course of their work during all of 2018, and the projections for the future for the club, we have exceeded all of those projections to this point just since that time. So I guess what I'm hearing is somewhat disappointing in that it's a process that this organization has spent countless hours, significant dollars, in studying what the future looks like and the needs of the community to move things forward. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
This is Bob again. I'd like to make a rebuttal to that, is that I understand that, but this is the first time that it's come to the Properties Committee. And so we have to make a decision. There are many clubs out there that have a want and would love to have that piece of land that you are looking at. And so I get here, the way we've been doing this before, it was come, first serve. But what is the best for the community? Is it best for the community that maybe we should make it into a multi-purpose facility that everyone can use? I can't tell you that till I see the master plan. And so I get here and I go, I think we need to have a master plan to be able to make decisions.
Madam Chairman, just reiteration, we are an association, not a community. I just want, again, what we oversee
Yeah.
is the recreation area,
Okay.
not streets, not the palm trees and things like that.
All right.
And I don't want people to be confused that we're out there looking at traffic lights and stop signs.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, but we also do have a responsibility to the neighborhood around a recreational area that if we take up all their parking spaces, then they have to park on the streets.
Totally agree.
And that's what I'm looking at.
Thank you.
So I just get here and says, I just look at this and say, we don't have the information to get here. And I think another thing that I would like to see the master plan is that when we talk about is allocation. Is that, and what's the best use for the limited amount of space that we have available?
Do we have any other comments? John?
Yeah, John. This is John Nicholas. Just want to comment that this actually has been going on a little longer than what Ken has mentioned. We started off with the pickleball tennis subcommittee, and we thoroughly discussed all the areas where pickleball could go. And at that time, tennis did object to Coots because we were right in the middle of the discussion as to what to do and how the tennis facility was going to be expanded. Then it was also brought up when we're dealing with the space utilization. We got into it when we talked about Coots. And we talked about various things. I know Cindy was real on top of all this thing, and basically she helped out a lot, especially with working with the neighborhood and so forth, and trying to find out what their problems were going to be, and did they object to the expansion at that time. The committee has talked about it from time to time. We haven't taken a vote that I can recall, but we have discussed it from time to time. The planning, we spent 1.5 years on the space utilization planning. And we finally got to a point to where part of the plan was initiated that we were working with, and part of it was put on hold, waiting for Bill to come in and put his fingers into it. He had some different ideas than what the subcommittee had come up with at that time. And so this is a continuation of that committee that we already had. And maybe it's going to be finishing this, the conversation that we've been having for several years. But the thing is that it's an ongoing thing. And the committee could turn around and come up with a final report next week or a year from now. And the following week, somebody will come up with a change to it. It's not something that's set in, it's something that it changes. You're putting forth ideas as to what we want to do. But somewhere along the line, you gotta sit down and say, okay, we're gonna do something. You know, I would like to know, you know, there's several clubs that would like to have something done, and it hasn't been finalized yet, and maybe this committee will actually come up there and come up with an idea that will do something. You know, I have no idea, you know, what's gonna happen on this new committee. But as far as pickleball has been presenting this thing for several years. They've talked about it. They've talked with staff about it. There's still some things that are out there that I think need to be looked at. But putting it off for another year or two doesn't resolve the issue.
Are you done?
I'm done.
This is Sherry Jones, and the motion, the way it's read, isn't putting it off for a year or two. It's putting it off until May, when the report comes back on the long-term plan.
You really think that the long-term plan is going to be, that they're going to come up with a long-term plan between now and May? You know, we worked on a plan with the space utilization for a year and a half and never came to a conclusion. It's an ongoing thing. It's not, you're not just turning around and saying, this is going to be the plan and we're never going to change from it. It's always going to change. There's always new clubs that want to do something.
Barb Sloan here. I'd like to kind of build off of what Bob said and then also tie in what Ken has said, is that my understanding of need versus want, when I've read all this presentation, this is definitely a need for pickleballers. But to the overall community, the presentation is not necessarily received as a need. It's perceived as a want. It would be no different than boomers saying they want to build a clubhouse there. They need the space. They've had that argument. So the strategic plan, hopefully, George, allows a direction for decision-making for future growth and expansion of Sun City West. I think that just because this one has been sitting around for 3 years kind of indicates that it's still, the community still is receiving it as a want, not as a need. There hasn't been hundreds of people storming the rec center main offices saying, you know, marching and demanding more pickleball space. So until, maybe this is built into that process of that strategic thing, but what is the highest and best use of remaining land or remaining properties that are sitting and not being utilized efficiency? Is the highest and best use to put pickleball in the Coons tennis courts? And what's the most efficient reach? Is the strategic planning committee going to look at square footage and numbers of people impacted? So maybe that community is a lot smaller than a larger scale think of what to do in that space. So I think that for me, I also don't support it moving forward right now until we kind of sew up this strategic plan thing that has never been finalized.
Anybody else have comments? Marshall?
Well, I can see, I kind of, a little bit leaning towards Barb there. I can see us discussing the Kuntz addition, but that's not taking any land. It's just replacing some of that area for pickleball. I could go for that situation, but I'm really not in favor of Palm Ridge addition.
I think what Barb brought up, which is exactly true, which is I'm trying to bring up, is that in other words, Kuntz is probably our last large piece of land that we probably have. And I think we need to get there and decide what is going to be the best use for it not the first club that came and asked to put something in there. And until we have a plan, we need to get there. What is going to be the best use for it? In other words, what Barb says, we have, 1,600 members of pickleball in a community of 25,000. So is it going to be the best thing for the community? We need to decide what is the best thing for the community with that space, because once you put something in there, it's gone. Okay, we can't do anything else, and I just think that when we just don't have a lot of space to develop, and I think we really have to look at is not just because they came and asked for it, and they've been asking for it for 3 years, that this is something we have to do.
Yes, Ken?
We didn't ask for that space. Actually, the Space Utilization Committee, including the Property Committee of 2018, came to us to ask us if we would consider that space. And regarding the point that this is new to this particular Property Committee, there's members of this Property Committee who have served on many committees involving this same subject, assembled under Mr. Whiting, assembled under our new GM, and property committees during the last 5 years have dialogued and listened to the needs so that we're at this point today. So it may be new to you specifically, but it isn't new to the association through the governing board and the committees that make the decisions for us as we move forward.
When we talk about a need, Carl, are those tennis courts going to have to be renovated down the road at Kuntz?
The tennis courts exist. They are tennis courts. So if after all of this discussion, this season, some results come from this, then I'm certain that the rec centers will, if it stays as a tennis facility, then it'll get discussed as a tennis facility. But at this point, it's just in pause. It's in poor condition, it's unsafe, but it's not becoming anything else other than, the comments from the committee today that should it become something else. So it would need to be refurbished as a tennis facility, yes.
I'd like to, this is Bob again, something that Ken brought up. This wasn't their first choice, and I understand your first choice would be Palm Ridge. But when we're making a decision like this, is that I come back to the second question that I have. How much parking lot are we going to continue to develop? And that has to be done in the master plan. Because you asked for it, does that mean Boomer's going to ask for it? Okay? Where eventually do we just keep going to Carl and say, give us the minimum number of spaces that you think can belong to a facility? And so without having a master plan, is that I say we are running out of space, and we need to decide what we're going to do with the space that we have available, and then decide what we're going to do and have a decision on the parking lots, because that is something. We have gone into the parking lots twice with pickleball courts and with the Restoration Club. And so we have to look at something more than just pickleball, because we have to answer to all the clubs. And we need to look at what is best in the long range.
Barb Sloan here. This, and I wrote up on the top of the most recent thing we got, this is bigger than pickleball. And this is a demographic reach. If the Strategic Planning Committee is doing their job right, it has to be a demographic reach as well. We were built as a golf community. A lot of people still buy in here to golf. A lot of people buy in here to play pickleball. I know somebody that moved from California, bought in here because of auto restoration versus moving out in festival. So the demographics has to be a part of the decision-making of strategic planning, because that impacts every one of our resale ability of our homes in here and impacts the value. If we don't offer the things the next generation, sorry folks, but they're moving in now. Millennials are moving in now, and they're looking for different things. It may be pickleball, so that still has to be a part of this equation. I don't play pickleball because I have an artificial knee, so I can't play pickleball. So I'm kind of biased, but if you take the swimming pool away, I'm not going to be happy because I'm a swimmer. So you can't please everybody, but you have to please the demographic that serves the future of this community, or this community is going to die. We all know that the revisiting of demographic reach that happened in Sun City, and everything is changing in there now. When we started looking for houses, we first looked there and it was like, oh my God, I'm living here. But they have things over there that we don't have here. They have a state-of-the-art pool for their master swim team. We have a state-of-the-art pool, but it's not dedicated just for swimming for competition. So people, that next generation down, you have to understand what they're looking for when they're looking for retirement facilities, and that has to be a part of the decision for the Strategic Planning Committee.
Barb, to your point, you're exactly right. What we right now are faced with, which is the opportunity, and we've had talked to, John, you've said it very eloquently about space utilization around and around. Right now, with the changing demographics that are going on, realistically, okay, we need to get a grasp on what we have that's available and then match it up with what the necessity of the association is as the first step. Because right now, by us saying we want to build this or do that or move someone here or eliminate this or, you know, whatever it would be a leap across something without the proper base. And again, the committee that was formed out there is going to look at what we have. And I don't want to call a club out because if they hear it, they'll say it's all about me. No, and I will say it very simply, as an example, the ice skating group, and I use that because we don't have one, is that, okay, if they had a spot and they were meeting and they have, let's say, 12,000 square feet of space and there's 45 people in that group, is that the right use of the space that's there? And again, that's what that first step of that group is going to be. And John and Marshall both, is it going to be finished by the end of May? No, but we're going to have an idea of what we have, what's available, and then we can match that up. And then when you put that all together, you will have the opportunity to say, what do we need to construct, refurbish, move, or take around there? And that, I think, is what the that idea of planning and strategic planning, Barb, to your point, is exactly what it's all about. Are the demographics changing? They change every day, okay? You know, who would thought as we sit here today, we would have a 15% increase in golf use over the last year? And again, we have, you know, we talk about our 8,000 golfers that work diligently every day out there, and everybody wants to play at 9 o'clock at Trail Ridge on every morning. And they have a lottery system, and they schedule themselves out, and they all are scheduled out accordingly. Some days you play at 9, some days you play at 1, some days you play at 2, some days you play at 11. The reality is that it's not just for the peak moment, it's for the strategic plan of everything that we have. And it really is the idea of the association to look at it and go forward as a big picture. I hope that answers your question, that we're trying to, that, again, right now I can sit here and say, we have clubs at use, and I know what club you belong with, Barb. Realistically, do you need more space? Everybody wants more space. Okay, but here's the thing. Is the space available for the use, or is it a use at a time frame? Do you have a space problem? Do you have a scheduling problem? And that's what these guys are going to work on, because that's what it comes down to. And I'm sure this falls onto space utilization heavily. Everybody wants to believe that we sit here and we have the use of our facilities from 8 to 11, and that's what we build for. And it's just not how the demographics change. Look at the bowling alley. 2 years ago, they weren't open in the evening. Now they're open during the summer for 3 and 4 nights during the summertime. And what has happened? Their volume has increased because of availability and changing demographics. Thanks. I'm sorry, Roberta, for
So
babbling.
this is Barb again, can I ask you a quick question? Normally, when you do a strategic plan or a forward think, you gauge it on a 5 and 10-year increment. So you're gonna do a far reach of 10 years, and you're gonna plan for five-year plan?
Right now, to reach to 10 would be a very large overreach. Okay, 5 is what it is. And the reason we're looking at that is simply because between boomers, Gen X's, millennials, used to be different when we had the greatest generation, okay, and then came the boomers. There was a large 15-year gap between the
Right.
two. As each one of these generations come up, that gap has been shoveled
Right.
down to 4, 5, and 6 years. So every couple of years, you have a change that goes on. We'd love to be able to plan and say, in 2055, we're going to have, 3 ice skating rinks. But that's not a reality of the demographics that change day in and day out here. It changes so often. I mean, every time you look around, what's growing? Is golf growing? Well, if you ask certain people, no. If you ask the PGA, yes. If you ask the people who make the equipment, yes. If you ask somebody who has a golf course that's municipal, they'll tell you no. And again, it's all those pieces that have to be put into the pie. It's not something that's going to happen overhand.
This is Barb again. I do understand, any of us who have ever sat on a golf committee meeting, though, and looked at the reports from Todd Patty and stuff, is they do forward think out, because golf, I hate to say it, is the tail that wags the dog in our community. So they do have to forward think out 10 years. And so you get a visual, especially somebody like me who's a finance person, gets a visual, this is what our association is committing to for the next 10 years. And I think, as what you're saying is, I think it allows for more community acceptance if there is a proposed forward think for the next 5 to 8 year type of process.
I mean, realistically, who would have thought 15 years ago pickleball would be what it is?
Yeah.
I mean, and really, who would have thought 20 years ago golf would be what it would be?
Right.
And again, to think, who would think that you have master swimmers that are out there doing what they do? This is, the change is happening much more rapidly than we're used to. And that's just one of the things is, I'm very much, the idea is to make sure, as the association, to make sure we have the right people in the right spots at the right time. Because once you build something, to Bob's point, okay, I'm going to build it, then I'm going to tear it down in 3 years for somebody else, makes no sense. And again, it's the plan that goes along with that. I know Carl doesn't want to hear me say about building because he likes to build stuff. But the idea that works with that is to make sure that we are making good, concise decisions, not only with our properties, Bob, but with our dollars and what is in the best interest of the association clubs that's out there. Because it's not just one, it's all 3 of that triangle. We used to have it at, where I used to work, the 3-legged stool, and this is exactly what it is. In order to make a good decision, all 3 of those legs have to be in the proper spot. Right. And we look at properties because that's what you are now. Yes, and again, that's what your concentration is. They have B and F. That's what those bean counters do. Thank you, Bob.
All right, this is Bob. George, I'd like to talk a little bit about demographics when we're looking at the long-range committee, because there's one thing that's going to be consistent that will never change, a true statement, is we're all going to get older. And so even though we're getting a bunch of 55-year-olds coming in here now, is that we're all going to get older. And as that happens, the high-activity sports, pickleball, swimming, bicycling, hiking, and they are going to start to drop out of those sports due to injuries. And I know that you get there and you say that. I've seen it, and is that and so eventually we have to get there and look at the overall as to what's going to happen as that happens, is that we know that a person that comes to the men's club and plays poker at 55 is going to continue at 95 and play poker, okay? But he's not going to be bicycling at 95, not with the bike club he's not going to, because I'm in the bike club. We have one person at age 90, and we have very few people in their 80s. It's just going to cycle around. And so
And Bob, to your point, all I can say is right now, when we look at what we're starting out with, okay, I hear you. That's probably 3 or 4 steps down the low road from where we're starting out right now. Right now, it's what we have, and what's the best use of it. That's priority first, because again, if I say to you, the ice skaters have to go to an indoor rink instead of the outdoor rink, okay? Guess what happens?
they're going to get wet.
It's not a, it's the fitting of the right amount of space to the right people for the right use. And that's square one, because until that's put in place, and again, to Marshall and John's statement about space utilization, till that's put into place, all we're going to do be saying, we want this, we want to build that, I need this, I want new this, I want lights. I mean, you know, it goes out on and on and on. Obviously, there's a lot of things that can be done. But again, like you say, space is limited. Okay, do we take the time out? And I always refer, Bill always says this, sometimes time out. You take the time out and look at where you are right now, what you have, and what can be used without anything. And, you know, there was a club that was looking for a huge amount of space, and after working it through, don't need it, found them what they wanted, and got them accordingly with what we had. Dollar cost value, absolutely minimal, okay? But the idea is that as things progress, things happen to change to allow space to be used accordingly. And that's all. And I think that's what we're looking for as the first step of that group.
Yes. And
But I think we're getting away from today's discussion.
You're right.
Is whether we are going to recommend this project to go forward to the governing board. We're not discussing the future as far as demographics and all that.
My apologies, Madam
I have one short statement, and I think we should probably call for a vote, and that is that what George said. All I'm asking for is a pause. That's all I'm asking for. We need to take a pause and come up with a master plan.
I think a pause is a good idea, but I think there's another variable. I know people don't like to talk about the COVID problem, but who knows what's really going to happen a year from now. There was a time when I didn't think there was anything but the wood shop. There is life after wood shop. And it's been kind of nice being home with Mama. But we don't know how that's going to go. And so I think to jump into a major project right now, I think would be a mistake.
And that's why I say, let's take a pause.
All right, so we have, Sherry, do you want to reread the motion, please?
Sure, I will reread it. The pickleball recommendation be delayed until further time when the master plan has been delivered.
And it was made and seconded. I'm going to go ahead on this one and do a roll call vote. Barb?
Yes.
Are you supporting the
Yes.
motion?
I support the motion.
Okay. Bob?
Yes.
John? Yes. Marshall? Yes. Sherry?
Yes.
And we don't have anybody on the phone? No. Okay. The motion fails. The motion passes. And our recommendation will be to delay this to the governing board at their meeting tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we're on the update for our capital projects. Carl?
Thank you, Director and committee chairpersons. Thank you, Director and committee. Capital projects updates for March 4th, 2021. Over the last month, R.H. Johnson has experienced an east property line fence replacement. That was completed on 2/9. The metal shop addition, an update. The plan reviews are complete, and requests for proposals are being sent today. R.H. Johnson member services modifications was completed on 2/19. R.H. Johnson small dog park fence had a warranty paint failure, and we repainted the complete small dog park fence on 2/9. Over at Grandview, it was requested to take the Grandview Golf Course, Meeker Boulevard cart path tunnels and put a safety rail up and around them so that no incidences could occur with somebody just going over the edge. So a nice safety rail has been installed there on 2/16. And currently for upcoming projects, we have Palm Ridge Aquatics closed until Friday. I poured concrete on replacement concrete walkways in front of the aquatics building. They were in poor condition, some were heaving. Facilities maintenance has done a stellar job on grinding concrete to make sure there was no safety hazards. But they're so unsightly, we replaced what we replaced over this week. And then over at R.H. Johnson Mini Golf, currently we are in the process of changing out all of the turf. That was a FY 2021 project, and that should be done in approximately a week.
All right, thank you, Carl. I had brought up to you a question about the Beardsley enclosure that this committee had. Is that going to go to Russ?
No, Russ has his report.
Oh, okay, I was going to finish with you. Okay, that's fine. Russ, go ahead. So we have Russ doing the facilities update.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Facilities is restoring the tile and grout Palm Ridge showers while we're closed. That was a project that we started and got a little bit behind when we weren't quite ready when we reopened, so they're attacking that while we're closed. The audio-visual upgrades have all been completed. This isn't even the right one. I think the only thing we have left is the the laser projectors to be done, and then we updated. We assisted Carl in doing the modifications up at the office, up in membership, and that's about all we've got on our list this month.
Roberta?
Yes.
Roberta? Just a question. Russ? Yes. Russ, when you say the AV, is the lecture hall ready to go?
I believe it is.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Because I'm asking the question that if the COVID numbers go down and we start going there or want to be ready, that we can move over there. That's the only question.
Yeah, I think the only thing we're waiting on is laser projectors, and that's it.
Okay, I don't look good in laser.
Carl, you said something about proposal. Are you talking about the architect drawings are out for bid? Is that what you said?
Yes, so the metal shop update is, we're to the point where plans are complete and put them into county for first review. First review comments came back with virtually no comments. It was just adjustments to site plans and stuff like that. Engineering and architecture did a fantastic job on the building engineering, and so we did not get any comments actually on anything structural. So that literally saved approximately 8 weeks out of the review process. And then once we received those first comments back, we sat down with the club And we have discussed all of the plans moving forward, facilities maintenance requirements for assisting in this project, things that I'm responsible for, and the things that the club is responsible for. The next step in this project is going out for bid, and then once I've received all of the competitive bids, we can determine where we are sitting against budget. So $570,000 was approved for this project. We'll see where those bids come in. Anything that's above that dollar approved, that the club would be responsible for those funds if that's the case.
So what month would the board, when would they approve the bid? June or May?
I have the bids due for mid-April, and that, you know, that's literally a vetting process of a few days with the CFO and I. If we are within budget, I'm moving forward. Permit is ready as we speak.
Because the amount of money's already been approved, of course.
That is
Yeah.
correct. The only discussion with the governing board would be is if we need to come to the table with the facts and findings saying that we need to ask for additional funds. And then I assume the governing board will move forward with the decision from last year, and the club would be presented with a bill to approve for payment.
So you're really looking for a summer closure?
Yes, currently, if everything moves forward correctly with funds, and I've told the bidding vendors that we expect to start the project in late May, and I would like to say that it would be done by October.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. On the Beardsley Aquatics lobby enclosure, we had some questions about the existing monitor station. And did you explain to everybody what's going to happen to that and where the new monitor area?
So in the
Some
presentation.
confusion that that would be closed off.
That's a good question. So in the presentation that you've all received and we've gone over, David Bennett provided a basic floor plan of what his vision for this space was, and that's what the dollars were figured against. The existing monitor station is a structural space. It's got, for lack of a better term, exterior structural walls in that open air space. So that would stay as is. It has the glass in the upper portion, and that would stay as is. And a nice millwork desk space would be built outside of it, like you see something at Palm Ridge's Aquatics entry. And as a monitor would be sitting there, they could still see through the old monitor station, observe the pool activities. So really, the monitor station just becomes a space for storage for this lobby idea. So below the windows, if there was a file cabinet in there, if there was a, things that are needed for, just being put away, but not for tables and chairs. It's not becoming a closet.
Would the sound system stay in there?
I couldn't answer that. I don't know
Okay.
that there's a sound system there.
Carl, is that wall that you're leaving, is that a structural?
So
In other words, it could easily be torn out?
there's no demo related in this project other than modifications to add windows to the archways and a door to the entry. So other than that, everything stays the same with the exception of the open air space that you walk in now would become a drywalled conditioned space with a drop ceiling in it.
I think the question was, is that you're leaving the existing space there.
Yes,
And you have the glass in front of it. Right now, you're walking up, and you got a wall there, and you got glass
yeah, the only
conducting
modification,
your business there. Is that wall and that glass, is that a structural area, or is that just,
that is a structural area.
so that's the reason you can't?
The only
you don't
thing
move it
being
to the structure?
modified would be the door would be removed.
You done, John?
Okay, I have one more question for you,
Okay.
Carl. During the month, I had a phone call and they were talking about the tennis courts and the problems. Could you address that? What's going on with the tennis courts?
Tennis courts at R.H. Johnson is what you're referring to? So the design for the tennis courts at R.H. Johnson have a post-tension slab and a drain system on approximately 5 court areas. So the engineering done on that project, the slab is designed to be anywhere between 5 and 8 inches thick per its design. It's post-tension, and post-tension is designed to expand and contract with the seasonal changes. The theory on the pour back, the second piece of concrete that holds the drainage system, was tied together with specialty dowels, rebar for a lack of a better term, and it's one component. That big slab of drainage concrete is not moving seasonally the same as the post-tension courts. So what's happening is where the two pieces of concrete, when they get tighter, they touch each other and spalling occurs. Just a couple inches on each side of the two dissimilar concretes flake and chip, and it's unsightly. To date, it has not even created an unsafe condition unless we just ignored it, which we have not. Every time it's been mentioned by the club, we've come in and done repairs, and those repairs just, re-chip, if you will. So we have taken Court 15, we have brought the vendor that did the courts for us, and he has graciously come in, and we are experimenting due to engineering knowledge to cut the pour back, if you will, loose from the post-tension slab, and we're going to observe that for 1 year. So we're going to cut the dowel loose, and we're going to put what we call backer in there and fill it with a silicone, and then finish it with a nice joint caulking and observe it for 1 year. If it's successful, then I would do the same for the other 5, but I do not want to invest anything in repairs on the other 5 if it's not going to work out. That's really, I know, lengthy, but it's pretty simple, and it's kind of a small issue. It's inconvenient because it makes the nice, pretty green surface flake, and you see ugly concrete spots.
Thank you, Carl.
You got it.
Any other comments for Carl or Russ? If not, I'll move on to committee comments. Do we have any comments? Barb, Bob, anything else? All right, moving on. Do we have any questions from people listening? No? All right. We have no further business. Thank you very much. See you next month. Meeting's adjourned.